Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, London Derry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Gaelic Lives, another podcast in what can only be described as a really busy season. Just chatting to Paul Durcan off air there, it's game on game, and we're bang in the middle of the group stages. This weekend we've got a couple of massive Ulster games, and I'm joined here by former Donegal man Paul Durcan of Goalkeeper fame, Coney from Tyrone. So two men to chat about this rivalry. Thanks a million for jumping on, folks.
Oh, thanks for having us.
I was sort of saying there, Kyle, sort of the Derry Tyrone rivalry is one half of it, but is the Donegal Tyrone rivalry big? Because obviously, I suppose whenever Jim came in as manager, him and Mickey were going at it. So for you, was there always a rivalry between the two counties?
It probably intensified a wee bit in and around the time when Jim came in. Mickey being probably a very headstrong character, probably I would imagine Jim to be something similar, but they didn't want to let up, and unfortunately on those times Donegal more often than not come out on top in those rivalries in the from about 2010-11 on for a number of years. So there was definitely a healthy rivalry there, because say Donegal were they had our number a wee bit over those few years, so that rivalry was still there, and I would imagine it's still very much there now among the two camps.
Like the Arbo, other side of the river, the rivalry with the Ballinderry lads, but looking at when you think of Donegal and Tyrone, what do you sort of think of in terms of the game? Is there one that jumps out, or is there a moment that jumps out, or is it a collective?
It's probably just more the collective, I would say. I remember we played Donegal in Breffni Park. I can't mind the year, if it was 2014 maybe. It was a real warm day in Breffni Park, and there was one man that was a thorn in Tyrone's side. For there was numerous men, but there was one man that caused us an awful lot of bother and sort of went off the boil a wee bit, and now is definitely back in song, was Jamie Brennan. Jamie Brennan was really, really influential in those games in those times, and I know that he sort of went off the boil for a few years, but he's come back to sort of Jimmy Brennan that we've seen over the last few years. So he's one person, but it's probably a collective more so than anything. Donegal as a team they were hard to shake off, so it's just I would say it's more collective than anything.
And Kyle, I suppose it just shows you that it doesn't have to be cross-border rivalry all the time. It's sometimes the counties that you're in the ring with all the time that sometimes happens.
Well, that has been the case, and that's why I said it was a healthy rivalry, because Donegal went on to win the All Ireland. That was in 2000, I think it was 12. So it's one of those ones where the Donegal or the Derry and Tyrone rivalry will always be there, and it probably depends of what part of Tyrone you're from. But for me, I lived a mile from Ballinderry Bridge, a couple of miles, so that'll always be there because of where I'm from. But if you're from the likes of Ronan McNamee, would be a feel away from Donegal, living in Ahayarn. That's where the Donegal rivalry would come in there. So thankfully Tyrone doing a wee bit better than Derry are at the minute.
That's an understatement. We're looking for a bit of a miracle. Paul, your own thoughts. Does it automatically go back to that save from Marty Penrose? You're chatting about Ahayarn there. Like, I know he got the Carman, but does that always come back to you, because it was a huge moment in the race?
Well, I suppose from my aspect, the earlier years is a memory of mine. Tyrone had the upper hand in us for such a long time through the noughties, and that's when I started playing. So that that bit of, I suppose you might want to call it hatred, would have been probably on our side more so, because they had such an upper hand on us. And definitely then when Jim came in, and as Kyle was saying with Mickey, that definitely sort of elevated a bit. And yeah, there was a healthy rivalry then, and I suppose we got the upper hand on a few occasions, but it's again, not too far away from it in my home place, so Tyrone's the closest county to me, so you do have that, but yeah, for a long time we were the playing second fiddle.
And like, there was a Tyrone and Armagh rivalry, and then obviously those couple of years, like the News beat was the year before that Brick scored the goal to sort of seal it, 2011, but 2012 was one with the save. It just shows you there was very, very little between you at that point.
Yeah.
Albeit Donegal were coming out on top.
Yeah, I think 2011, Kevin Cassidy scored two big points before half time to sort of pull us back in. And without them, we were well behind in that game. So yeah, it was definitely, they were very close in fairness, but yeah, 2012. Then obviously that last gasp from um, from
Penrose.
from Tyrone, Marty Penrose. Definitely it was. We were lucky that it bounced around for a while, so it could have went anywhere.
Because funny, whenever Sean Patton did the double save from the penalties, like Jim had talked on, he says James Gallagher had done it night after night after night, just repetitiveness. Was that something similar to yourself back then? Because like, I think it was the 73rd minute and it was 12-9, and like a goal, God knows what would have happened if it had been in. So how much sort of work goes into a moment like that?
Yeah, like you're constantly, I suppose it's a bit of a thing that's out there now with GA goalkeeping is there a requirement to be able to make them saves, and do you spend as much time focusing on that, where probably 80 or 90% of your game is kick out, so you should probably focus on them in training, but you do have to do that work, because when you're called upon at that moment in time, it can win or lose a game. And we were lucky enough that we had Pat Shovelin, God rest him, coaching us back then, and Pat was sort of living in Tyrone, I suppose. So there was a bit of that. He was right on the border there. So that's what he was always saying to us, that he was on the inside track. But yeah, we would have worked on that all the time, and it's an even like, how do you even prepare for a save like that? It's just a reaction. You don't do them in training. It's more, you're working on hands and that, but like, yeah, when it comes, it's nice to be able to get the foot to it.
And Kyle, the other side of it, I remember you throwing dummies against Derry. I still haven't forgiven you for that Ulster Minor final, and Cormac Arkinson's point that maybe didn't go inside the post. But in terms of a forward back then, like, how much emphasis do you put on finishing? Because it's such a big thing, and I suppose maybe more so now. You would love to be playing now at intercounty level because there's a lot more freedom. But how much time goes into actually finishing, versus Paul's work to try and save shots?
Well, I can talk about the goalkeeping as well, because I done that yesterday for Arbo in a challenge game.
Barry Dillon give you the short straw, or is this a new?
No. It was the goalkeeper. I got an injection in the foot last couple of weeks ago, and it's just the keeper was away on holidays, and they played a friendly game yesterday with the league being pushed back another couple of weeks. So we played a friendly yesterday, but it's a lot harder than it looks, I can tell you that.
But the finishing side of it is important, because
absolutely,
that's what won or loses games like.
Yeah, absolutely finishing. Do you know what? I've been doing a bit of coaching now myself, and thinking back to my own career, even at intercounty level, I think them sort of split seconds where you have less time to think about what you're doing. When you're finishing, if you're just getting balls on a repetitive theme and you're just having snapshots, because I think the more time you give boys, and the more time that I felt that I had, you're nearly you relax in your approach then, where if you're just getting balls, after training you would stay about, and you would just get somebody to ping you in a few balls, turn and have a shot. And that's because that replicates games. You don't have much time at intercounty level. at all to have the shots. You know what I mean? And if you're able to do it under pressure, that is half the battle. But as I say, if you have too much time, sometimes it's not a good thing.
And Cale, I suppose we're talking about this year now. So Tyrone obviously got relegated. Was it in 7 points? Because I remember us and Derry thinking if we get to 6 points, which we got nowhere near, but it wasn't even enough. But then to sort of struggle against Armagh and then be minutes away from beating them, where do you think the Tyrone team sit right now? Because it's a new competition now.
Yeah, look, Tyrone are still hard to figure out and where they're at. It is a question, that's hanging over their head. It's a mixed bag in the league. You started well against Derry, and we thought, right, we're going to make a good stab at the league, and then some poor performances after that, and then to finish out the league on a high against Dublin, albeit relegated, but played really, really well that day in Omagh. And then we come up against Cavan, who didn't pose as a wild pile of threats. But the Armagh game is the one. Obviously, it's the most recent game that the Tyrone have played, but Armagh probably with a better team on the day. That's to be said. In terms of they're only literally a kick of the ball, and we had Dar McCurry who scored 10 points. Dar Canavan who looked to be still carrying the effects of a knock that he had a few weeks earlier, and then there was a bit of a bug going through the camp. That's why Matty Donnelly didn't feature, and Peter Hart only come on for a few minutes. That's all they had in them. So there's positives to take out of that performance, but still just a question of even the style of play. Sometimes I don't know what we're, are we a running team? Are we a kicking team? So there's things to figure out, and no better place to try and figure them out than in Ballybofey.
Leads me perfectly into the next question. Paul, what is it about Ballybofey? Like, I was doing a podcast a wee while ago, and Cass mentioned the tunnel, just how narrow it was. But when you're out on the pitch, you've obviously got a great record there. Like 2018, obviously Tyrone went there in the last game of I think it was the Super 8s, and did a number to get to Croke Park. But Paul, what is it? Is just more comfortable there, or is it a myth, or what is it?
No, I think it was something that was targeted back in our day as a critical point of us taking the next step to getting success, was that we would be hard to beat at home, and it was something we worked hard at. And it was every game it was mentioned. There was an awareness about how long we had gone unbeaten. We talked about even Ballyshannon. I don't think I ever lost a game in Ballyshannon, and we always loved playing league games there. Could we bring it to another place? That's was hard to come to. Donegal, it's well up there, and it can be hard to get to for some. So why make it an easy place to come? But we had bad days there too. But definitely it was something Jim targeted as well, and I think that has come to fruition now. We were lucky enough to get a lot of training sessions in there, which, in my opinion, always helped. You were on that pitch constantly. It was the pitch that was lit up for league. To an inter-county standard that you were able to train under to that level. So, you got to know the place really well, and I think you can see that in the boys now.
And you're obviously in with the under-16s. You're going well in the Buncrana Cup, and Lacey's twisted your arm to get a bit of time out of you with the coaching. But obviously, like, there must be a real buzz in the county. Like the scenes in Clonus, you sort of TV maybe didn't do us justice, the excitement. So there has to be an unbelievable. There's no other way forward buzz in the county at the minute.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm living in Sligo here, and a few people said to me, "Oh, it'd be great that if it was in Croke Park, the Ulster final, and you'd be able to get lots more people to it." But I suppose my point to them was, you need to go and be in Clonus for an Ulster final day, even if you're not playing or your team's not playing. It's a special place, so that added to the sellout and the crowds. And in fairness to Armagh, how good their support has been, and the Donegal crowd that came out. So I wasn't there myself, but it's like it was a pleasure to watch, and the intensity of the football added to that. It was real good, and just I've seen when Armagh and Tyrone played a few weeks before that, like that game really was probably up until the Ulster final was the best game I'd seen probably in a couple of years. Tyrone, they were really controlled and brought it to Armagh and vice versa. It was a tactical warfare and it was good, so looking forward to now seeing what Tyrone bring to Donegal.
And obviously they met last year. I think that was the first game of the group stages, and then you just got beat by Cork in the week after or 6 days after. So the fact it's Tyrone again, like there's so much familiarity there, Paul, with it. So is there a danger of, maybe Jim doesn't allow this, but is there a danger of some sort of flatness after the Ulster final, or that just wouldn't be allowed, or how is it a concern?
It's a concern, and it's probably in a lot of ways it's an uncontrollable for management. I think it's a mindset for players to bring. There's very little management can do in influencing a player going into a game like that. So, I think that'll be brought out in training, and I would imagine they've been fairly intensive the last week. So that you would imagine that's all been ironed out, and yeah, it'll be. But on the day, Tyrone coming in there, like it'll be intensive. Niall Morgan, he's we've seen him kick frees in Ballybofey before. I was at it. Was it 2 years ago? Like Tyrone walked all over Donegal. They beat them in midfield, beat them all over the pitch. So we know Tyrone can turn us over there. So I would imagine the boys are well aware of that.
And you touched on the tight games that Cale, like you say, you're involved in coaching now too, and like the tail end of that Armagh Tyrone game. Like, how do you prepare for the tight games? Like those tight finishes, they just prepare you for the next one, because the last 5 minutes is, I suppose, whenever you're in your corn. Is it just repetitive big days that leads you to have that experience, I suppose?
Yeah, well, there is no. You can plan all the scenarios you want to training. You'll set up scenarios of training where you're 2 points down or you're a point down, and you're playing. You've maybe the clock on for 5 minutes, and you set it up where you want your set plays. But you can do that as much as you want to train, and it does look. Your set plays will help coming down the stretch, as you say, with maybe 5 or 6 minutes to go. But them types of scenarios, like even the likes of Tyrone the last day out against Armagh, and then Armagh and Donegal, and the Ulster final, being involved in those big games, those big moments, that's what earns people the right to be there. And you would imagine, like, one moment that sticks in my head from last year's championship was Armagh and Down in the Ulster Championship. That was a set play to win that match from Jason Duffy coming off the sideline, just to swing it over the. So that's what you replicate in training, and then you go till it in games when you have the chance. But video work would be a huge aspect of all that as well. If you just say you come out on the wrong side of it, you take a good hard look at it and you analyze it as a group, and you say what we can do if we find ourselves in situations like that again. But those real-time scenarios in games are what's most valuable for players and teams to learn from.
And what do you feel Tyrone need to look at this weekend if they're going to turn Donegal over? Because they say they're Ulster champions, they're on their home patch, but Tyrone, as you say, have a wee bit of finding out to do. But what do you think that, obviously Dara being fully fit will be a help, but on top of that, what else is there?
Well, Tyrone have to take a huge amount from whenever they played Donegal last year. They were beat by a point, I think it was. Michael McKiernan. Michael McKiernan had a shot on his left foot down along the sideline, and it was an Ulster championship. And it was probably the wrong decision. That's what you're talking about, where if you have that scenario over again. But Tyrone did change their tactics when they met in the group stage. Then later on, they sort of stepped off the kick out of Sean Patton's bit, which didn't go to plan at all for them. So I think Tyrone need to take a wee bit of learning from the likes of Down. I was at the Down and Donegal match this year, and Down were getting joy by not going into the sort of the trap that Donegal want to set. Donegal don't put a pile of tigers out now. We see Nushin Condy kick 6 points the last day out. He wasn't man marked to such, so they sort of be more aware of their zones and their compactness. They want you in and around the sort of spider's web to break at speed. And what Donegal, or what Down done, what I thought Down done really well was they were finding, Eugene Brannigan and the likes was finding wee pockets in behind, just about 15, 20 yards in from the sideline, cutting in where there was pockets of space and they just didn't get their shots away. They kicked a few wides. They were getting joy from those types of areas. And I think if Tyrone take any learning from that, that's where you get the joy from a very well-structured Donegal sort of setup, because they want that chaos. They want to break at speed. They want Ryan McHugh. They want these type of boys flying out with the ball. And I think the less time you give them that gives you a better chance of winning the game on the other end.
On the flip side, Paul, will Tyrone look at sort of the 2 pointers that Armagh kicked against them? Will they look at that? Will Donegal look at that and think, can we afford to concede 2 pointers, 2 point chances here? Because was it McKiernan kicked one? Like, is that an avenue where Donegal could be hurt if they sit back? Like Kyle's chatting about the fact that they don't push everybody out. Is that somewhere for Donegal to tighten up?
Oh, it is, and it's something I think a lot of teams are going to have to deal with. That's where I think Tyrone were so impressive against Armagh. Is they made them come out, and they found a lot of pockets inside. But you could see with Kieran Thompson, for instance, the last day, there is certain shooters that you nearly need to, as Kyle says, tag them out high. But I don't see either team sitting back. The ball definitely is traveling an extra 10, 15 meters because of the weather we have. So that range has just gone out again. So you could see that the last day. League football was completely different. It was a struggle to hit a shot from 45 meters, where now it's a tap of the foot. So I think that'll implicate it. The weather, it's supposed to, it mightn't be as hot as well, which will have an effect on it. So yeah, I think both teams are going to be very aware of it and pushing out on shooters. 2 points. We've seen what Cavan done to Mayo yesterday. The game was tight. A 2-pointer just turned it on its head.
And Paul, like Sean Patton was limping during extra time, and I think it was an ankle injury. And like Gavin Mulroney, he was talking in the media before the final how, as a sub goalkeeper, you just have to be ready. Like Blaine Hughes coming in that day in Corrigan. So there could be a chance for, maybe if Sean's not available, how mentally tough is that for a keeper to step in? Because it's not like you maybe haven't got an awful lot of game time, but if it comes to it and Gavin's asked the question, it's a big task.
Yeah, no, and listen, Gavin has his own attributes. Gavin, like I've been lucky enough to train with him. He's an excellent keeper, so he's a confident guy. He won't fear the challenge. I know that for sure.
He kicks it as long as Sean too.
He can, yeah, definitely, yeah. And that's something that I haven't seen many do. So yeah, and like if you can imagine, I don't know, midfield touches at all with Niall and Sean kicking, so it'll be bypassing them. But yeah, no, Gavin, he'll have no fear of going in, and the guys, I know the players are there in Donegal have good faith in him, so I don't see an issue with it, But listen, Sean's an outstanding keeper, so and he's proven to be an asset. So yeah, listen, it'll be something they have to deal with, but I don't see it as an issue.
Kyle, who do you feel will come through?
I had this question earlier as well. So I'm well versed on it. The heart probably says Tyrone, but the head probably says Donegal, just for the fact that I'm not sure. You can look at it, you can flip the coin both ways. The layoff might be, good for Tyrone to get rested and get niggly injuries cleared up and get maybe, a few clear strategies set up. And then on the flip side of that, Donegal have played very recently and they'll be very much match sharp. But just think that the Ballybofey factor might just come into it under, in previous terms, Jim, and when the Jim wasn't there, maybe that wee bit of complacency and that fortress that Ballybofey maybe just wasn't there. But I think with Jim at the helm, that complacency maybe that you find that sometimes seeps into teams, it won't be there. So I think Donegal will come out on top by a slight margin, maybe a couple of points victory, but through gritted teeth to say that, and I'm hoping for a Tyrone victory, but just think Donegal might have too much on the day.
Before we're going to Paul, Kyle, actually, does the fact that Cavan and Mayo have already played change the game in any way? The fact there's already a result and obviously an upset, does that change the game at all?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It changed. From my own mindset, being a supporter, it changes because now you think the Cats definitely amongst the pigeons now, because you're maybe thinking in the back of your head you have, there's 3 teams go through if we beat Cavan or whatever it may be. We have a home game against Mayo, but now that Cavan have the victory on the board, it just adds that wee bit more pressure to the game for Tyrone, in my opinion, because as I say, Cavan's tails will be up now. They've had a bit of time off to work on things as well. I think Cavan were poor as much as Tyrone were good against them in the championship. I think Cavan were just had an off day. So that victory gave them huge confidence, especially going to Castlebar. I know Mayo's probably not the team they were of the past, but still, it's a big scalp for Cavan to take. So it just adds that wee bit more pressure to this game, I think.
Paul, do you think the Ballybofey record will continue, or are you worried about a Tyrone victory, or how do you see it, or will we have a draw?
Well, listen, yeah, that's the easy answer, I suppose. But it'd be, I would see, listen, going on the form, you would be hoping Donegal will win it, but it's like going back to where I was talking about it. I was chatting to someone before the Ulster final, and I was kind of saying that Armagh looked to me nearly 10-20% better a team than they did last year against Tyrone. And I could, then Tyrone put it up to them so much. And so there's something there on both sides. And I think Tyrone will be, they'll have been thinking about this game. They'll be set up tactically. Will they frustrate Donegal, like we were saying about pushing up on them on the long range? They'll have someone man marking Murph, which that'll be a big contest. So I don't think it's going to be all Donegal's, but I'd be very hopeful that they should when it is at home.
Just before I move on to the second part of the podcast, just on that Michael Murphy situation, I remember Dan Higgins scored the goal for Derry, and the next kick out was on top of Murphy, and Conor O'Donnell had got a point, and Kyle touched on it, Down did really well on the kickouts, but one big ball from Patton was aimed at Murphy, and I think it was Patrick's goal came from it. So as a goalkeeper, it must be a brilliant extra to have, if extra is the right word.
It is. It's an outlet, in fairness. When I was there, I was lucky enough that I'd Neil Gallagher, Rory Kavanagh, as targets, but the waves would, it would open up as you seen Murph coming. Everyone got out of the way, so yeah, he is definitely he's a good target. But listen, he done damage when he was inside against Armagh, so I have a feeling Donegal will try and keep him close to goal.
Donegal had that kick out for a number of years where sort of the midfielders split and Murphy came up the middle and Ryan McHugh was the flick on. That was the sort of the go-to kick out maybe after a major score on the other end if they happen to get it. If some team happened to get a couple of points on Donegal or a goal, that was the go-to kick out. So it's some option to have.
Definitely.
That is, and I think it probably worked. What you're saying, I don't know, did we know that was going to happen, to be honest, but it did work out. But he's an intelligent guy. When he's going up for a ball, he knows if he has to break it or catch it, which is probably an unknown skill for a lot of players. They don't know whether to flick it on or to catch. So he is that's him, to a T. He's intelligent. So yeah, he's a good target man.
So it'll be a real humdinger game, one to look forward to, and we'll be back on Monday to check out how it went, where it was won and lost. We'll take a break here now, and we'll be back in part 2 to talk about Derry and Armagh.
Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
Cale, you did say that Tyrone were ahead of the pack in Derry at the moment, and they are. Derry have yet to win a game, so they now face the task of going into the Lions' Den, the All-Ireland champions. So it's a team who are the holders of Sam Maguire versus a team who haven't won a game. So it's a bit of a contrast. Is it something you're surprised by, given the fact Derry were Ulster champions a couple of times in a row? So it's different.
Yeah, look, yeah, as you say, you have Armagh coming in on one hand, obviously losing an Ulster Championship game, not a normal time. I think, did I see somewhere the other day where they haven't lost an Ulster Championship match in 3 or 4 years in normal time? So,
says it
all. Just shows you how competitive that they are and where their standards have been over the last couple of years. But I don't think anyone really expected the drop off from Derry to be as drastic. The way it has. Obviously, the Rory Gallagher factor has been huge, and it's been something that's been hanging over their head for a long time now. But it's like they still have quality players all over the pitch. It's just that I don't know what, can't put my finger on it. I listened to Gareth McKinless's podcast recently where he spoke, and he felt that, I'm not saying that they wouldn't run through the wall for Paddy Tally, but it just seems to be that the manager had them all singing, literally eating out of the palm of his hand. So that can have a huge factor. And whenever things is just not going the way it's supposed to go county level, and then you have a team on the other hand to say Armagh coming in All-Ireland champions, they'll be a wounded animal after they're getting beaten in the Ulster final. But there is an opportunity for Derry. Like we looked last year, was it Westmeath? Armagh only get passed by a point or two in the group stages. So sometimes you find that the teams playing in the provincial final, just depending on the mindset, depending on how the mood is in the camp, that can be the time that you can be nipped. So there is an opportunity for Derry, but like they need to be on the ball early, getting scores. I think if they went 5 or 6 points down, it could be a rough evening for them.
Paul, they've been 7 weeks in the long grass since Ballybofey, and I remember going into Celtic Park last year where Derry were National League champions and very much talked about Sam Maguire contenders, and Donegal were in the long grass and came and completely hammered Derry in Celtic Park. So what's the long grass like for somebody who's waiting on a big fixture? Like, is that somewhere Derry can find themselves now? Where is it about yourself at that situation? Is it about focusing the other team, or what way do you see that? Because I suppose it's Derry's main thing at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose we done the night up for the match for McCool's the night before. That's where I met you at it, and we were chatting. And I was saying to you, I couldn't get over how Oran Lynch wasn't in nets, but I think, Derry really struggled against Donegal in their own kick-out, and that's, they probably weren't as far off Donegal in the sense of, if you go beyond that, I don't know, would they have beat them, but there definitely wouldn't have been as big a gulf. So you would imagine in them 7 weeks they'll have worked on their kickouts, about getting them away. They had no ideas that day, unfortunately for them. But I think, that's one thing if they can bring to the game, because we've seen how good Armagh were on their own kickouts, and then when Donegal got the upper hand on them, the game changed in the Ulster final. So, it's a massive, massive part of the game where Derry were really lacking against Donegal. So I think that's the sort of stuff that you can really work on in those 7 weeks. I've no doubt they have. So, Armagh is a hard place to go. But it's a stadium that I think anybody I've ever talked to loves playing in fairness to Armagh, they've brilliant facilities, and I don't think Derry will fear going there themselves either, so I'd be looking at it'll be a tight enough game if they can get on top of that.
ironically, we're talking the two club goalkeepers at the minute, albeit we're not sure how long Arbou's experiment's gonna last or whatever. But
it's over. I can tell you that.
It's over. There you go. But do we talk too much about kickouts? Are they really that important? Some people say to me, why do you always talk about kickouts all the time? Is it too easy, or is it just so important? Is that the bottom line, Kyle?
Yeah. Sorry, Kyle, go on ahead.
Yeah.
No. Look, what I noticed yesterday, and like being at games and watching games and being involved, because the 3 up now, and I know teams obviously kept players up the pitch whenever they had a kick out or whatever it was previously, but now if you get clean possession, the mark, you see, you can't be touched for 4 meters, so it's like you're nearly 100% sure you're getting a shot off if you catch a clean kick out. You know what I mean? That's like, I noticed that yesterday in the club game. Like, if you were able to get clean possession from 60, 70 yards from your own goal, you're nearly almost sure you're getting a shot off. So kickouts, like for example, Saturday evening, the game's in the melting pot. Cluxton finds the hoof in the middle of the pitch, and it ends up with a winning score because it's clean possession and it has to go a certain distance now. Where previously, keepers may have been tipping it to a corner back or whatever it may be. So, kickouts are massive.
Sorry, Paul, you're going to come in there. You on that?
I know, like, it's probably an easy thing for me to say. I always end up talking about it, but I do think it's such a critical part of the game. And we've seen when a team gets on top of an opposition kick out, what Kyle is saying is you have the advantage straight away. But I think what we can see now is that it's you have the advantage, and if you lose your own kick out and say it does end up 5-10 meters shorter than it normally would, or it's a hard break back, you're in a world of bother as a defence, because you're trying to give them that time, maybe if they've marked it, or else you're backing off, to not concede a goal. So, whatever about it's the big part is when you get on top of opposition kick out, I think it capitulates and it keeps going and going. And that's what happened with Donegal Derry, for a 15-minute period.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel it's going to go, Paul? Do you feel that Armagh are favourites because they're all Ireland champions? Because they've obviously got more hurt. They've lost another big game. Is that where it is, or are you giving Derry a chance, or how do you see it?
No, I would listen. Derry, they haven't become a bad team in a year. We've seen how good they were in the last few years, that they have the ability. We talked about it that night. Like some of their forwards are just exceptional when they get going. So they'll definitely pose Armagh threat, but I do think it'll be dictated by them. Armagh are very good at putting pressure on kickouts, and I think it'll be a massive part of it. But no, I don't think I do. Listen, you'd expect Armagh to win, but it'll definitely not be easy.
Okay, and you seeing an Armagh victory? You chatted about if there's a 5-point margin, it could be difficult, but what way do you see the overall big picture?
No, I definitely give Derry a chance. I'd be under the illusion that it's, as I say, Armagh should just have too much for them, too much firepower up front, and then the bench, whenever it does get stretched to the likes of Stephen Campbell and those type of boys to come on, it just their strength and depth in their squad is really impressive. Some of the players that they're bringing on is every bit as good as the players that are starting. So it seems to be now that you have a starting team and a finishing team. So just think Armagh will have too much for Derry on the day.
I say the main focus of our podcast was to do with Donegal and Tyrone, but Monaghan are obviously playing Louth, and Louth are champions after 68 years, and Monaghan weren't that far away from Donegal, Paul. So how do you feel this one goes? Because Monaghan were pretty close. Obviously it came down to that very last kick at the end where Sean Patton put it out over the sideline. But is there a favourite here, or is this a edge of seat one?
No, I definitely. It's hard to call with Louth. They're on the up and up. It seems to be. I think probably when you watch the Leinster final after the Ulster final, that bit of intensity drops slightly. So it'll be interesting to see how, because that's the one thing that definitely Monaghan had against Donegal was a huge intensity. Their physicality around the middle, shocked me a bit in the sense they'd every time Donegal had the ball, there was someone making contact constantly. And Donegal struggled with that a bit. So it'll be interesting to see that, Monaghan bringing that out of their championship and bringing it to Louth, and will there be a big difference? But I do think Monaghan may have a few points on them.
And finally, Kyle, there's obviously the play at the end of the game. Sorry, was it the last 5 minutes where Louth kept possession? Sam Malloy kicked that winner. You're chatting about strength of character. He missed a few, but he nailed the biggies. But that spell where Meath physically couldn't get the ball, how aware? Well, they obviously will be. Monaghan will be really aware of that you can't afford to let Louth dictate it, because they don't give it away, because they've been in a few Leinster finals, have a bit of experience at this stage. So it's a big part of the game.
Yeah, it was a bit, not that, I don't know, they recognised the time on the clock at that stage, and they were sort of set for a period of time in, and then they started to chase the ball, and they eventually then they just ran out of time, the way that the shot or the hooter system sort of works now. So, I was impressed with Louth, the way they held the ball, they kept it out of contact, no touches, and as you say then, Sam Mulroy, he had missed a few, but it didn't dent his confidence one bit. He seemed to know himself that he would come good. If you keep knocking on the door, you'll. And he made the adjustment. I heard Dean Rock saying, that Sunday night on the Sunday game, that he missed one at the near post, but he knew to make the adjustment and draw it back in this time. So this is a game that's so evenly matched. It's so hard to call. The other two games is on this weekend. You can make a case for the winners. You can argue their corner, but this game is so evenly matched where it could go either road. I think Monaghan have some serious footballers as well. They have a strong bench. Jack McCarron didn't start the last year, and then comes on and is able to finish games. But I think maybe just the crest of the wave that Louth are on as a county in general, with all three teams, the minor team, the under-20s and the seniors, I think they just might ride that crest of the wave, and the confidence they might just come out on top.
All to play for, lads. Thanks a million for your time. Former Donegal goalkeeper Paul Durcan, former Armagh goalkeeper Kyle Coney. Thanks a million for your time and your insight, lads, and hopefully an exciting weekend of action. And folks, you can join us back on Monday on our podcast to see where the games were won and lost, and all the reaction from the big games. And thanks again to our sponsors, Everglades Hotel. Paul, Kyle, thanks a million.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.